All right, and it's time for today's interview. For today, we have got the Utah Jazz beat writer for the Salt Lake Tribune. Find him on Instagram and Twitter at Andy B. Larsen. Don't forget that B in there. It's Andy Larsen. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so you've actually been on the show before a long time ago. It's almost been a year, back in July 22. So we've done the rapid fire questions with you before. So I've got some new rapid fire questions here. So this is just,
Okay.
helps us get to know you a little better here.
Yeah.
Again, like we did last time, just don't overthink this. Just give me your answer right off the top of your head, please. All right, here we go. First question: Taco Bell, McDonald's, or KFC? Which one are you picking?
Mickey D's.
PlayStation, Xbox, or Nintendo?
Nintendo.
Apple or Spotify?
Spotify.
And the last and probably the most important question of all these very important questions: Blink 182 or Taylor Swift?
Ooh. I'll go Blink. I'll go Blink 182.
And have you ever seen them in concert by chance? Or
No, I haven't. My brother was really into them, but yeah, and I just am not a T Swift person. I'm not nothing against T Swift. I don't want the Swifties to come after me, but yeah, I just never got into it.
so you're saying you're not spending a couple grand to go check her in concert somewhere or
Yeah,
anything like
sorry.
that? No. All
Leave
right.
that for again, the Swifties, people who actually care.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. Well, obviously, I want to have you on because we're in the midst of Jazz draft season right here. It's under a week away now from the draft. But before we get into draft talk, I wanted to maybe reflect a little on last season. It was a pretty surprising season, I think, for most folks. What was the most surprising thing to you? What really just, when you look back onto the season, says, wow, this one thing just, I can't believe that happened?
I mean, that they were good is obviously the big picture surprising thing, but I mean, to me, the absolutely most surprising thing was Lowry Markkinen, right? I mean, that you had a guy who had a 5-year NBA career at a certain level. You don't expect statistical leaps like the one Lowry took. And for it to have happened the way he did, the just kind of shot making he showed, the athleticism, the really league leading number of dunks for his position. It was remarkable, right? Like, it was completely unexpected as and one of those statistical outliers, which kind of makes this game so much fun. So yeah, to me, number one was just absolutely like Lowry Markkinen going from like meh kind of starter to all-star starter is a remarkable transition.
Yeah, speaking of him, obviously either one of us dealing with social media folks and talking with Jazz fans, and I'm sure you've heard this too. I think there's a high level that people have with Jazz fans right now about him going into next season, and sometimes you maybe need to talk him down. Do you think that next? I mean, obviously, I don't know. It's going to be really hard for him to live up to the same as he did this last season. Next season, do you find yourself ever having to talk Jazz fans down on that and saying, "Guys, don't be so hard on him next year if he doesn't do it again"?
I think you have to give him a chance to do it again, and I think there's it's hard because you should it would be natural for some regression to happen and some kind of scouting to happen, but ultimately I thought Lowry did a really good job of kind of continuing to excel despite more defensive pressure last year, and ultimately, given his age, I don't really expect regression, I guess. Like, I kind of expect him to continue to improve and kind of figure out new ways that, like ball handling and passing, I think are clearly things he can improve on. I think it is something that he can work on this summer, even with his military commitments. Maybe the shot percentage goes down a little bit, but I still think he's going to be a really excellent player next year. And maybe I'm one of those people who do think that, maybe the expectations are sky high for him still just because of how good he was. But I don't see like a whole lot of reason that it can continue.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe that short military time he had this summer, he got all jacked up, and he'll come back and be even more something. Who knows? Speaking of serving their country this year, Walker Kessler, I think, was a big surprise for me last season. Was there a point in the season where you were watching him and said, "Damn, this guy is a lot better than I thought he was"? Do you remember like watching a certain game that happening?
I mean, like game 4 or 5, right? Like, and maybe game 1. Like, it's just he was immediately much more mobile than kind of the draft expectations were, right? Like, kind of the thought was, hey, Walker is a probably going to be a backup center in the league, and that's why he slipped to where he did, because the idea is the league would move too fast for him, and he wouldn't be able to keep up. I was really impressed with how smart he was right out of the gate, right? Like, and able to kind of sniff out some of these pick and roll actions and the feints that top NBA point guards use. He wasn't worried or bothered by them. Like, frankly, I thought he did a good job, like a better job of defending in the pick and roll than someone like an Andre Drummond, who's been in the league for years. Would always bite on like the Joe Ingles pass fake. It never felt like Walker Kessler would bite on that kind of stuff. I think, I don't know that there was a point, but it was clear kind of right away that he should get as many minutes as possible, because he was kind of the one good thing about the Jazz's defense last year. Nothing against what Vanderbilt was, but it just is a night and day difference in terms of your ability to lock down the paint. And so, I don't know that there was one moment. I think I remember talking to Will Hardy about it pretty early in the year, like November, December, and like kind of talking about how to get Walker more minutes. And he said, look, we're just going to be patient with him, but this kid's going to start at some point this year, and obviously that ended up happening at the trade deadline.
So we actually got a chance to interview. We actually got a chance to interview him on the podcast here, and I got to say, just as a fan, I mean, when a player agrees to do that, it's already a bonus in my books that he's cool enough to do that. But just talking with him, I'm sure you've talked to them a lot, though. That guy is like amazingly just down to earth. I mean, he was in his home in Georgia, his family home. Like, he hasn't gone and spent money and like bought a big house or anything. I was like, this is like your bedroom you grew up in? He's like, yeah, it's cool. I was like, it looks like a motel behind you and stuff, but he's just so down to earth, and it's so awesome. And as a fan, it's cool to see that. And as a media person, did you just totally pick up on that too? He's just so down to earth, I guess.
Yeah, he's a normal kid, and it's awesome. I think rookies are sometimes some of the most fun people to talk to in a locker room, because they're not, jaded yet. Everything's still very new for them, and it really, when you're trying to explain the story of a game or a story of a season to your audience, my audience at the Tribune, it's kind of neat to have those fresh eyes on it, because it's a clear kind of explanation to what it would look like to an outsider. I think Walker is totally that, and it's just someone that's fun to shoot the stuff with. We can talk about restaurants, we can talk about video games, we can talk about all sorts of random stuff that Walker likes doing. And the other thing is, like, frankly, go look up what the rookie scale salary is for the 22 pick, right? Like, it's not that much money yet, right? Like, he hasn't had a life-changing, I guess it's life-changing, but it's not an unimaginable amount of money, I guess, right? And so I think he's still a little bit one of us, and like I think that's kind of fun. But yeah, Walker rules, and it'll be really kind of interesting to see how he's able to add to his game, how his personality changes, and all that as he continues to mature and stay in the league.
Do you think, because he's getting to play with Team USA now in FIBA, do you think that's going to help him a lot? I mean, obviously that helped Lowry last year. Is there a chance that it takes him to the next level, do you think?
Yeah, I think it could. We'll see. Obviously, like we'll see kind of who else is around him, who else is on that team, and how good they're able to do, how long they're able to stay in the tournament. Hopefully, win it, but we'll see. I think, it should help. It's one of those things that, like, it can be a new perspective. Like, for Lowry, it was a new perspective to be like, hey, you are the number one guy on this team, and all of a sudden your role is very different, but you are still excelling against kind of NBA level talent, at least, in Eurobasket with Finland, right? This is a little bit different of competition, and Walker's role will probably be about the same as what it was with the Jazz, right? Like, he's going to be probably a backup center, probably into block shots, right? Like, and so I don't think I necessarily expect a huge amount of growth in terms of like what he can do, but just having like different coaches and kind of different eyes on you, I think does help. And obviously it's a really cool experience and kind of shows him kind of the level that he's at. And I think that's always something that Walker is he's very humble about, like I don't think he thought that he would come into the NBA right away and be a starter. And so kind of maybe raising that self-belief a little bit can help push him forward.
Yeah, so speaking of the young guys on the team, Ochai is playing in Summer League this year for the Jazz. what do you think? What I guess the question is, what would you like to see from him in summer league? Is there things that he should be looking to dominate in or improve in to show off his game?
Yeah, I think secondary skills, right? Like the Ochai criticism, and I think fairly so, is that he can score from at least kind of all three ranges. I think probably more the rim and the 3-point line doesn't have like the most amazing mid range game, but the assist totals are low, super low, and the rebounding totals are super low, even for someone just at his position. And so it's like, okay, how else can you make an impact on the game besides scoring and pretty good defense? And so I want to see the ball in his hands, and I want to see him play make. I want to see him be a secondary playmaker where he's finding open shooters or open guys down at the rim when the ball's kicked out to him. I want to see him attack closeouts and find open guys. I mean, kind of all this stuff that I think he did struggle with a little bit last year. And in order to do that, the ball handling will need to improve, and just kind of the vision and overall understanding of the speed of NBA play is going to need to be there. So, I think Ochai had a pretty good rookie season, and especially at least a good last 2 months of the rookie season. Obviously, he hardly played in the first 2 months, but yeah, in order for him to kind of reach his potential and be more than like a Reggie Bullock type player, he's going to need to add versatility to his game, and I think right now he hasn't shown a ton of that, and will need to to be more than what he is now.
So just kind of ending the talk on last season and going into this year's off season, for me, I think somebody that's a loss for the Jazz that a lot of people maybe haven't talked about is Alex Jensen. What do you think the impact's going to be? Is it going to be a big impact on them, or is it because it's Will Hardy's staff now, it's not going to be as big of a thing?
I don't think it's going to be as big of a thing, and frankly, like there was Alex Jensen did great work with Rudy Gobert and Jazz big men in years past. Derek Favors, obviously, and was kind of a key part of Quinn's X's and O's brain trust. I got the sense that Alex wasn't quite as important last year with Will Hardy's staff, and that's nothing against Alex. That's just kind of a new coach and a new situation, and trusting your own guys. I think I expect Alex to be successful, but I think ultimately I'm not that worried about the Jazz being able to replace kind of his assistant coaching contributions. He wasn't the lead big man coach for Walker last year, so that's kind of not that big of a worry to me either. I think it's going to be fine. I think there's frankly, I think it's the Jazz feel like they can do okay with another assistant coach in that spot, and don't feel like they've lost a lot. I don't think.
All right, cool. Well,
Again,
let's move
nothing against Alex, but that's just kind of different coach,
Sure.
different relationships, and kind of as you try to build a coaching staff, what are the strengths of someone, and what can they bring to a different coach with a different skill set.
Honestly, I mean, if we're being honest, though, I was actually kind of surprised he was even with the team last year, that he was still there. So at least, I mean, it's cool that he got the chance, but obviously it didn't work out for them and that whole experiment, you could say. But
Yeah,
let's
it's one of those things where Will was hired pretty late in the kind of the coaching circle process, right? And because Quinn took a while to figure out whether he was staying or going, and whether or not the new contract would work out, and so kind of the lead, Will didn't get a chance to bring on a ton of new assistants, and some of those guys were still under contract, and so it's just kind of one of those things where I think it takes a couple of years to build out again the assistant coaching staff that Will wants.
Cool. Well, let's move into some Jazz draft talk here, and to get the Jazz draft talk going, I have some Jazz draft trivia for you here. So let's see. I feel like you're probably good on the trivia stuff here. So let's see here how you do. So the Utah Jazz have the 9th, 16th, and 28th pick this year. The Jazz have only drafted 9th once in their whole history. Do you know who it was they drafted?
Gordon Hayward?
Okay, yep. I saw you kind of questioned yourself there, but yep, it is kind of a tricky question. All right, so the 16th pick. Do you know who the last player was that the Jazz drafted the 16th pick?
Was Stockton 16?
Okay, he was, but that's a good one. Yeah, but he wasn't the last person. There has been another one since then. If you'd like, I'll give you a hint. It is somewhere between 2000 to now.
Okay.
I mean, that's not a good hint, but it's a hint.
Chris Humphreys? I don't know. Yeah.
That's kind of close. It was Kirk Snyder in
Chris Snyder.
2004.
Okay, so yeah, same draft.
All right, and how about let's go the last time the Jazz drafted somebody with the 28th pick. This has been a while. This is in the 90s.
90s. So Deshaun Stevenson?
Again, you're close. It was 1999 Scott Padgett.
Scott Padgett. Okay.
And then actually in 95, Greg Ostertag was also
Was it
a
28th?
28th pick. So some history there on the pick. So let's get into some draft talk here. Obviously, it's coming up quick. Jazz fans are excited about it. As a reporter, like, obviously, I know as it gets closer, you're probably a lot of your stories are going to be about the draft and things like that. What do you have to do is like focusing on? Obviously, you're probably not watching a whole lot of Wemby videos or Scoot Henderson videos and things like that. So what do you do to get yourself ready for the draft?
Yeah, I mean, for the last month though, I have been kind of watching everyone else, right? Like, and part of the unique thing about this draft from a coverage point of view is that the Jazz do have 9, 16, and 28. So really, you kind of have to know almost the whole first round, right? Like, and honestly, sometimes I just watch Wemby video because it's fun to watch, the freak that is Victor Wembanyama just like dominate and shoot ridiculous shots and block 8 shots a game and so on and so forth. But, so yeah, the last month, 2 months really, because I'm not able to watch a lot of college basketball during the NBA season, I catch up on kind of learning about who these guys are. Watch interviews if I can, watch their games, watch kind of the scouting report, YouTube videos, read some really good content. There's a lot of good draft Twitter, kind of draft Substacks, the Box and One. I mean, just there's so much good work out there. Look at the statistical models on, kind of which players are projected to do well, Kevin Pelton stuff, whatever. And then really, honestly, this week and obviously next, the focus shifts on more like, okay, now that I've learned about these players, what is it that the Jazz are actually going to do, right? Or what are the other teams around the league trying to do, or trying to get intel to some degree, right? So that's now the focus, and obviously, we're still early in that process. I don't know who the Jazz are going to draft. But yeah, in terms of kind of coverage, that's kind of where I kind of start to flip the switch in terms of the articles I write.
So this year, the Jazz decided not to do, I guess, not let media or us fans know who they're bringing in for workouts, even though it kind of gets leaked out. But the downside to it, really, for me, is that we don't get to see like the media, you or anyone else, go in and interview these guys, because I really like that interview stuff. Did that really disappoint you when they released that news? They weren't letting you do that this year?
Yeah, it sucks. And it's always fun just to get to know players as they come into the league and see them shoot and see how the shot form looks and see them in person. There are guys that look bigger in person versus smaller. It's just kind of it's fun to get to know the next batch of NBA players. And so that's a really missed opportunity. And I think it kind of missed it makes us miss some of the fun moments in draft. I don't know that we've had in draft workouts in the past. I mean, so obviously there's the Donovan Mitchell workout, which was really exciting for those who were there for the workout. Obviously the media doesn't get to see like how Donovan Mitchell plays against X player, but we do get to talk to them afterwards about it. And Donovan just stood out right away as someone who is very different in terms of character and in terms of professionalism and excitement for the role. Remember he worked out for the Jazz, even though the Jazz didn't have a draft pick in his, projected range. And I was able to ask him about that, and he had a great answer and, was very ready for the moment in a way that was very impressive. So you kind of miss out on that. I remember Keita Bates-Diop kind of like collapsed on me in the scrum at one point. Just like was too exhausted from the altitude and the workout that just happened, and just was like, and so that was kind of funny, and actually kind of had to lay down on the ground. You just kind of miss a lot of the color. I miss getting to talk to Walt Perrin about the prospects and how the workout went. I think there is just a lot missed from a media point of view and a Jazz fan point of view that now all of a sudden we used to get and we didn't. And so I do feel like fans are more disconnected than ever from the team over the last couple of months, which I think is a shame. I get that there's kind of the secrecy reasons and they want to make it slightly more difficult for the league to know who they've worked out, but it's all getting leaked anyway. I think Yeah, I think it's a disservice to fans, and it's a bummer. I hope they go back at some point, but I'm not holding my breath.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Like, Anthony Black is in town. Apparently, he's taking photos. They're either staying at Little America or Grand America and taking photos from there. And it's just,
Yeah.
did they, if they're not going to let you guys in and talk to them, why didn't they tell these players not to do photos and stuff like that or whatever? It was kind of a weird thing, I thought. And then you see these workouts from like the Pacers and the Blazers, and I miss that. It's just so cool to see this stuff, and it's kind of a down. And then they're not even doing a draft party this year. It just feels like a big kind of a L for the fans. I mean, I understand maybe there was some kind of conflict with the arena, but you could always do it somewhere else. I don't know. It's kind of as a fan, I've kind of let down on that. So
yeah, and frankly, like, when the draft is going to be. So if there's a conflict and you run the arena, right? Like, so if you want to throw a draft party, just schedule the thing for not on the arena date. Like, I don't know, on the draft date. Like, I think if you want to have a real criticism of the org, like, and I think this goes back to not just the Ryan Smith days. Like, I think this is just kind of how the Jazz have seen themselves change. But like, this is still a Miller thing. This was a Steve Starks thing, a Dennis Lindsey thing, whatever. There is less of a focus on being fan and community friendly than there was 10 years ago. I don't think there's any doubt about it. In terms of the events that players are asked to do, in terms of kind of the access fans have to players, in terms of the access media has to players, in terms of draft parties, in terms of those kind of things. I think it all has kind of declined a little bit, and that's a bummer, because you and I have been watching the Jazz for a long time, and we kind of know what it was. And that's not to say that the Jazz, other NBA teams are doing this too. Like, the Jazz are actually relatively still media and fan friendly compared to a lot of teams in the league. Like, the Clippers aren't doing this. Oklahoma City's crazy. Miami is locked down. There are a lot of teams around the league that have really, really locked down their players and locked down these kind of media opportunities. The Jazz are still one of the best in the league, and yet there still has clearly been like a decline of, a kind of community orientedness, if you will.
So getting back to the draft here, obviously you talked about you've been last month or so watching a lot of this stuff. Have you come up with your own quote unquote big board of maybe like 3 guys that you're like, these are dudes I realistically think the Jazz could get at 9? Is there one guy that you're like, they should really try and trade up for this dude? I really think he would fit well with the team.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would love to come out of this draft at number 9 with either Jarris Walker or Taylor Hendricks. And some mocks have one of those guys fall into number 9. I would say a majority probably don't. But I really think Taylor Hendricks I love as a prospect with a really high floor, because he's got a terrific 3-point shot and terrific weak side defense and on-ball defense. And right away, those two things can make him, honestly, almost a starter level player by themselves, right? Like, he really moves so well on the defensive end, and just 3 and D 4s in the NBA, like, can do really well and can stick. I mean, like, right away, I think he can be better than Jay Crowder, and then you look at kind of the potential in terms of ball in hand, and I kind of buy that. Like, if he does add that to his game 2, 3, 4 years down the road, then all of a sudden you're looking at a 20-point per game scorer. But even if he doesn't add it, and I think it's a 50-50 proposition, I still think he's just like a really valuable player to have. Jarris Walker I love because he is got terrific feel, right? Like, he's kind of Draymond light on the defensive end, just kind of directing traffic, and was such a huge part of why the University of Houston was so good last year. Offensively, I think that I buy the jump shot a little bit. I think he's got kind of mid-range interior bully ball feel, kind of like Julius Randle did when he first came in the league. And yeah, again, another guy that I'm kind of buying in on as someone who can, at the very least, can help in significant role player ways, and at very best can be a star in the NBA. And that's where kind of the intel part of the conversation comes in. Is like, okay, if I'm sitting at number 9 and I think those guys are going to go 6 and 8, let's say, can I move up to one more pick to Washington to try to, or to Indiana at 7 to try to get one of those guys, and what does it cost me? If it only costs me the 28 pick, sure. If it costs me Talen Horton-Tucker, yeah, great. If it costs me, and the Jazz can't trade Talen because he's, likely impending free agent, but you get it. If it costs me Ochai Agbaji, I'm less excited about it. If it costs me the number 16 pick, I again probably say no there. But I totally understand. Your hope is to get one or two of the best players that you have on your board, and to me, those guys are pretty high on my board that I'd want to definitely explore going out and get.
So the guy for me that I guess I'm head over heels for is CamWhitmore. That is not going to obviously fall to number 9. Have you watched any of him? Do you see anything that you like there that you think he could really fit in well with the Jazz if they were able to move up and get him?
Yeah, I think he's a really, really, really good prospect. Obviously so athletic, can shoot, cares about defense actually, is big and goes through people, doesn't draw as many fouls as I would like despite that, but I think is a really good prospect. My worry with CamWhitmore is that he doesn't pass and that he's very kind of considered in his actions, right? So the ball will kind of swing out to him on the weak side, and then he'll hold it a little bit to kind of evaluate the defense before starting his drive. I think we saw in these playoffs and in NBA, recent NBA history generally, that you want to generate an advantage on the offensive end and then take advantage of it, with the next player and keep kind of those 0.5 second decisions moving. CamWhitmore is making 3-second decisions, and it did slow down Villanova's offense. So honestly, that's one where if I'm running CamWhitmore's workout, I'm trying to figure out how much of that was a product of who he was at Villanova and how much do you think you can improve that? So he's super young. He's 18. So can you say, I would ask him questions about it, like, hey, how do you feel about making 0.5 second decisions in the future? How can you think that that's an important part of your game and your development? And then I would run him through workouts that are designed to do that. And, you can do that in kind of 3-on-3 plays. Like, hey, we're going to put you in a pick and roll situation and you need to make the right play with our coaching staff, collapsing on you in this certain way, or, whatever it may be. You can run workouts to see if that's kind of part of his game that he's willing to and is excited to develop. So I think he's a player to me that I'm pretty sure will be like a 20-point scorer in the league. And that's honestly a great outcome, obviously, if it were to be at number 9. But in order to be like a true winning player, right? Not just a scorer, but a winning scorer, I think he has to be a little bit quicker in his offensive decisions. But again, so young that you hope he'll figure that out.
Yeah, and then a player that's really gone. I mean, we talk about starting to look over mocks and everything the last month or so. I think we know a player that's gone from possibly being available for the Jazz at 16, even maybe later, that's now possibly a top 10 pick, is the French guard Bilal Coulibaly, or however you say his name. I got to say, I'm not so sold on him. And I think a lot of it just has to do, and this is going to sound maybe lame for people, and I know people are already saying I'm lame and saying this, is I just have that whole Dante Exum fear on me still again. A tall, foreign player coming in, and is he going to be big? Is he going to be big enough? Can he do the Rudy thing where he puts on the weight and muscle and stuff to survive in the NBA? I guess the question is, where are you at on him? Do you have fear of what he can do if he was to get drafted by the Jazz? Yeah, good, bad. What do you have on him?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think of him as like Dante Exum-ish, but I did this article for the Tribune a couple days ago, looking at the last 10 years of picks between number 5 and number 13, so kind of a 4-pick range around number 9, and the busts that have happened in that range, or maybe even bust is strong, but kind of disappointing picks, right? And by far the most common reason why a pick disappointed was that they couldn't shoot. And in order to stay on the NBA floor in 2023 or 2020 or 2016, you have to shoot the ball really pretty well. Unless you are a ball in hand guy and do so much other good stuff that it's overwhelming. You really have to be one of the best players in the league at whatever else it is that you do. And I worry about, with Coulibaly, he's not a good shooter right now. And the shot is a little wonky. And he doesn't have great feel on the offensive end. And I think he's got a good first step, and I think he is a very good defender. I don't think he's I don't think he has the feel to be like an elite defender right now. And so to me, you're looking at a 2 to 3 to 4 year project, and then all of a sudden you're getting to the end of his rookie contract, and I think you worry about whether or not you are retaining the value. If you're the team that gets to benefit from his development, right? Like we've seen kind of with these raw prospects that it might be their second or third team until they really figure out what keeps them in the league. So I don't love the Coulibaly idea. I think the Jazz have a good player development program and could work well with that guy, but at 16, I feel okay about kind of making a bet like that. But I also don't think like his physical tools are so overwhelming that like you're excited to make a bet like that, like a Giannis or even a Poku to go on the other end as like someone who didn't work out. I just think that like it's kind of a risky bet for, I think in my mind, like relatively pretty limited upside, but I know that other smart people disagree.
So my conspiracy brain, as we get closer, obviously to the draft, there's a lot of rumors, made up stuff, whatever. And like I said, he's really just gone up lately as far as where he's supposedly going to get drafted. And obviously, a lot of that has to do with his team. His PR team's probably doing great work helping him sound better than maybe even is. And that's what happens a lot with foreign players. But is it possible, too, my conspiracy brain here is that maybe a team like the Jazz, they don't even really want to draft him, but they just put some feelers out there and say, oh, yeah, this guy, we're really interested. When the truth is they don't want him, but they want a team maybe, say, Washington, who everyone knows wants a guard too, get scared and go, whoa, Jazz are really considering this guy. Maybe we should get him. Or maybe a team like the Thunder, who also apparently are interested, they go, oh, we got to trade with the Jazz. They're going to get him before we can. So conspiracy Daniel over here says that. What do you think? Is that plausible at all?
I totally think it's plausible. I'd say two things. Like one, we think the Thunder want him because Sam Presti flew to France to watch their Mets 92's last game. Like, that would be a lot of work to do for a smokescreen. It's a long flight. It's at a key time of year, to be away from the rest of your staff to go see a player that you weren't legitimately interested in would be a surprising amount of work. So I kind of buy Oklahoma City's interest as sincere. With the Jazz, like I think could be smoke screening, but I would also say that like the history of Jazz draft coverage has been not at all smoke screening. Like, frankly, whoever David Locke talks about, or whoever Tony Jones talks about, or whoever Jonathan Gavoni is talking about, Sam Vesney, usually ends up being who the Jazz are interested in and ends up taking. Like, even if it's weird picks like Grayson Allen, Udoka Azubuike, like I think. So, it's a different front office. You don't have Dennis Lindsey there, but you do still have Justin Zanuck. You do still have a lot of the same other people who report to those head executives. I would be like, the history of the Jazz has been much more leaky than it has been smoke screening. So we'll see. And, part of that's what I'm trying to figure out over the next week too, is what's real and what's not. But if it were a smokescreen, that would be, frankly, a new tactic in Jazz draft history, or at least one that hasn't been well executed in the past.
Well, who knows? Maybe I'm actually paid by them, and I'm actually trying to throw you and everybody off. So who knows? Yeah. It's totally. So a guy that you mentioned Locke, and Draft Express even talked about him yesterday on a tweet and on going on ESPN is Cody Buffkin out of Michigan. I mean, Locke's been really high on him, and they even tweeted yesterday that apparently the Jazz are high on him and look for him maybe at 9. That sounds crazy to me, but I don't know. What are your thoughts on him? Would he be a good fit for the Jazz?
Yeah, again, like that. This Cody Buffkin might be the test here on like if smoke screening is real. Because agreed, like number 9 is really significantly above what consensus would be on who the best players are available, right? Like I think you could make a case for him at 12 or as the 12th or 13th or 14th best player in this draft. And you'd be relatively excited about him at 16. At 9, I don't love it. I think he's certainly a good scorer at the collegiate level. I think competes on the defensive end. You see kind of a ready role for him in the league. And to me, then the question is like, okay, how valuable is that role in the playoffs? When I think, frankly, shooting guard impact is more limited. But I think he's a good prospect and is actually a fun kid to watch. I just don't think he's one of the 9 best prospects in this draft personally.
So I'm not sure if you saw, but the Locked On crew, they did a mock draft the last couple of days, and David Locke was the GM for the Jazz in that. And in that mock, he actually did a trade with the Thunder. So he traded the 9th pick to the Thunder and took the 12th pick, and then the Thunder also gave him back the Jazz 2024 first round pick. Obviously there's a lot of chatter going on right now about the Jazz being interested in moving up and can they move around in the draft. Do you personally see the Jazz doing any kind of trades, whether it be moving up or maybe doing the lock thing where they move back to 12 and get the first round back for next year?
I think clearly they're trying, right? Like there's been too much talk about it. I mean, Woj talked about it yesterday on ESPN. I think Vesny also said something about it as well. It does just make too much sense to see when you have 9, 16, and 28, you've got all these future firsts, you have kind of these assets, and frankly, you're as far away on the court as the Jazz are to really explore everything you want to do. And I kind of agree that number 9 is a tough place in this draft because I do think there is kind of a drop off, frankly, after the top 7 or 8 prospects. Again, kind of that Taylor Hendricks, Jarris Walker drop off. I don't love Anthony Black as much. I don't love Cason Wallace as much. I don't love Cody Buffkin as much. I think so. It's kind of natural to see what you can do with those picks. I do absolutely think the Jazz are looking at options and really kind of aggressively trying to look at those options. But I also don't think they feel like they're necessarily close on anything.
So you kind of just mentioned one of the players I'm about to ask you about, but still, okay, say the Jazz stay at 16. They're on the clock. They got to hurry and make the decision. They have Cason Wallace and Keyonte George. How do you say? Is it Keaton? Both there. Which one would you say they should pick?
Oh, Cason Wallace I like a lot. I actually do really like Cason Wallace and would not be that disappointed if he were the pick even at number 9. Like, I think he is he's a bulldog on the defensive end. He's so good at getting steals that no other player really has the rights to. He's a good shooter. You feel pretty confident in him at that end. And then it's like, is he your primary ball handler? I probably don't think so, but like maybe I think he's like kind of your secondary point guard. Not to say he's a backup point guard, but you probably want to sign it on a championship team. You probably have the ball going through an MVP level player that he's probably not going to be. But I think he can help you in so many different other ways. Frankly, the comp is Drew Holiday. And while I think that's like an optimistic outcome for what Cason Wallace is, it's totally not unreasonable given where his game is. And we know Kentucky guards famously do better in the NBA than they did at the collegiate level. I do think Cason Wallace did pretty well at the collegiate level. So that's exciting. I think he's actually a very good prospect, and I like him a lot.
So just the last question I have for you as far as the draft conversation here. Is there anything the Jazz could do on draft night or maybe the day before draft that would totally just make you go, holy hell, did not see that coming, and surprise you, like totally surprise you?
Yeah, I think like if they like traded all their picks for a win now star, right? Like that would be shocking. What would be surprising would be, I think there's a world in which they do that, but I don't anticipate them being able to do that deal. The other obvious one is like if you trade Lowry Markkanen for the number 3 pick, right? Like I think that is potentially interesting for the Blazers. And I think there's like a world in which if the Jazz really, really, really bought into Scoot Henderson, like that might be worth doing because you have really 8 years of team control of Scoot versus the 2 years you have Lowry Markkanen under contract still. I nevertheless think Lowry is probably going to be a better player than Scoot Henderson over the next 2 years, but just team control means so much in this league. So I kind of understand how that could happen. I don't love Scoot as a prospect, and I kind of suspect like he's not really a Danny Ainge kind of prospect either. So I don't think that they're going to do that, but it is kind of that, again, if you're asking me what would stun me, that would stun me.
All right, so coming up, obviously the draft, but after the draft, pretty close to it is just decisions they got to make on the roster as far as players that are going to opt in and opt out. Obviously, the most important one, or the number one, would be Jordan Clarkson. You know, everyone suspects him to opt out. So, with that being in mind, do you feel like he's like their number one target as far as a free agent? How important is it to bring a Jordan Clarkson back, or is it not as important?
I think they see it as important from like a keeping at, obviously Jordan Clarkson's I think he's a culture piece. I think he is a very good player. I think he is an asset you don't want to lose for nothing though either. The Jazz have evaluated trading him, not this most recent trade deadline, but last trade deadline, and haven't found any real bites in terms of getting back what they wanted. I think it's not necessarily, again, you look at kind of the players Danny Ainge looks to acquire, and he doesn't really fit in that mold. But losing him for nothing would be a real shame from an asset point of view. So I think they'll look to re-sign him on something. And, I'm really curious kind of what his market is, given, his style of play, given what he makes most sense to play for a contender as a sixth man, frankly, but the contenders widely don't have cap space. And so like, where would he fit is kind of an interesting question. And I know he does like it in Utah, so I think he would prefer to stay. So it's going to be interesting kind of how that market plays out.
Do you suspect? I mean, I feel like a lot of people that are asked about this recently are stuck in the middle on it. But what are your thoughts on THT? Do you feel like your gut feeling is that he stays or he opts out?
My gut feeling is that he opts out at this point, and just because kind of his current contract is pretty close to the full mid-level, and if you can get more years on it, I think that makes some sense for him. I could see him opting in, and again, it depends if he can find that mid-level, and it's obviously agents are having conversations with teams to try to figure that out. Maybe he even gets a little bit more. The thing with him is he's so young, 22 years old, that even his like super inefficient level of production is interesting, right? I think the big tailing question is he ever going to be able to shoot the 3-point shot well, right? And if he continues to shoot 30% from three as he has in the first 4 years of his career, he's not going to be a starting point guard. If he can get better, then all of a sudden he's really, really interesting. So we shall see, but my guess would be opt out. And honestly, I don't think the Jazz would be super heartbroken to lose him.
So we talked about, the draft is so amazing this year, but then for the Jazz who have all this cap money to use this year, free agency is not so good this year. Who is there maybe one or two players that you would like to see the Jazz bring in or hope they get, I guess?
I think it's interesting. I think you can go a couple different ways with cap space. You can sign a player who isn't a great fit right now, and try to trade him later on, essentially use that cap space to maybe get a tradable asset that you can trade at the deadline or next year or what have you, or give kind of someone a shot. Or you can use that cap space to take on a bad contract and maybe get other future picks to take on that bigger money. I kind of think the latter makes more sense given who's out there on the marketplace, right? Like, so if you sign, I don't know, Fred VanVleet to a big contract, then really is he that tradable moving forward? And what could you possibly get for him? What would that mean for the Jazz? I mean, if you upgrade from Jordan Clarkson to Fred VanVleet, I think you're 3-4 wins better. But where does that put you in 2025, 26 when the Jazz really want to be, competitive and championship contending and so on and so forth. So, I think it's a really interesting question, and it really kind of depends on the dollar values. Like if you can get a discount, you feel like you can get a discount from someone on the free agent market, then great. I think you use that to you snap up that opportunity, right? It's kind of like what Justin Zanuck said at the end of the end of season media availability. Like, it's all about making a series of really good decisions. Like, it's just let's pick up pennies when they're on the ground and find out where we can get more value at this point, because the Jazz are pretty far away from a talent point of view in terms of really contending in the West. And I think Danny Ainge knows that, and I think again they're just kind of trying to keep and add value wherever possible. Kind of no matter position, no matter how fit works. It's kind of they're one red paper clipping their way up to being a good team at this point.
So this might be a hard question, just considering we don't really know the full roster of the team for the Jazz going into next season. But if someone asked you to write an article now about what is your looking forward to the Jazz next season, I mean, do you expect them? Obviously, last season going into it, they had a lot of chatter of them. They're going to be the worst team in the league. They're going to suck. Do you think they're going to have some of that same chatter going to next year, or are they going to feel maybe not as much pressure on them and just go with the flow?
Yeah, I think obviously they'll go with the flow a little bit and have higher expectations. The expectation is going to be to improve in some way, and we'll see what happens with the roster, and obviously that matters so much. We'll see, who they draft. That's frankly kind of what I'm most excited to see next year is kind of the development of the young players and the rookies, whoever the Jazz do end up getting. But yeah, they can't play the chip on our shoulder card anymore, right? Like they won't be projected to be the worst team in the league, kind of no matter what, unless they really do blow it up, trade Lowry for 3 first-round picks, trade really everyone, and even then you'd be like, well, you still got Ochai, you still got Colin Sexton, you still got Walker Kessler. Like it's still going to be hard to be the worst team in the league. So I think that to me is like, again, it's about development. It's going to be a long process. And so, it reminds me of covering the 2013-14 Jazz and 14-15 and 15-16, where you're really learning like, who is Derek Favors in this league and who is Gordon Hayward in this league and who is Alec Burks in this league. And like, how can each of these guys really contribute at the NBA level? And it's, Trey Burke's weaknesses just something he can improve on, or is it something that's going to kick him out of the league entirely? So like, I think really you're at like, we got a ton of information on the Jazz last year. You're still kind of in information gathering and development mode in terms of this roster. And that's what next year is probably going to be too.
Kind of speaking of next year and just right now, you just reminded me of something. Is Colin Sexton? I'm sure you've noticed it, but he's seems to be doing a lot of good PR for himself right now. As far as he's been staying in Salt Lake, and this summer he's releasing this docu-series. He's making himself available, going to Bees games and Real Salt Lake games. Do you get the feeling, and this is kind of a feeling I get, is that he really is going to put it on himself probably that next year is going to be a big year for him as far as being able to stay healthy, make himself more valuable. I don't know. I just get the feeling that that's their plan for I'm talking about him and his camp to make sure next season is big for him. Do you get that vibe at all?
Yeah, I mean, he really, really wants it. And look, Colin's hilarious. He is truly works harder than like I think any NBA player I've been around. Like, just is a crazy person in terms of how much he wants to be in the gym, how much he loves being around the game. Like he's in Salt Lake not for the PR reasons. He's in Salt Lake to like work with Jazz coaches and because he thinks it's the best thing he can do. And Colin, is completely remarkable in like how much he loves basketball and how much he wants to be great. What's interesting is how far away he is, despite that, from being like a really like smart basketball IQ player in terms of being a elite decision maker, in terms of being a elite defender. Like the effort is 1000% there, and it's almost like you kind of wish you could pull back the reins a little bit and say, hey, you're going to make better decisions and be better for the team overall if you go at 90% sometimes rather than 100% at times. So I think that's a really interesting part of Colin, and why I kind of buy Colin more than I do other players of his prototype is because he does work so hard. His parents travel with him to, at least his dad travels with him to most games during the season. His mom was there a lot last year too, as he kind of got him used to Utah in a new environment. So I think they're probably around a lot. He's just a good kid. And so it doesn't surprise me at all to see him at RSL games and Bees games and, around Salt Lake right now, because he's just like so excited about kind of the work he wants to put in and getting better at basketball. And we'll see if it pays off. Like he has been this kid. He was this kid in Cleveland too. Obviously we're getting to the point of his career where, he's not just a prospect anymore. He's nearing his prime. So you're right that this year is a really, really, really big year for Colin Sexton.
All right, so I'm going to wrap this interview up by giving you a chance to teach us about a sport that I very know little about. We did this last time, and this is soccer. What I know about soccer is that Real Salt Lake, I feel like at a time was huge. They were champions, they were sold out, and now when I see pictures of people who's going to the game, it doesn't seem like there's much sold out games and stuff like that. As somebody on the outside that doesn't know a whole lot, explain to me what's going on with Real Salt Lake. Is soccer still a big thing here locally? And I guess there's something big that recently happened with Major League Soccer that's kind of big news. I guess you could tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, so with RSL, like I think a couple things happened. One, Deloy Hansen bought the team, and that dude's just evil. He's cheap, famously evil. Like again, was multiple reports of using slurs around black players, both with RSL and without, and playing for other teams. Multiple reports of being weird with the national women's soccer team, the Utah Royals. Is, I think it's fair to say, just a bad dude, and so was a bad owner, and didn't contribute a ton of money to the on-field product in a way that the rest of MLS was starting to. So the rest of MLS really grew its budgets, and the RSL kind of stayed stuck in its 2010 glory days in terms of what they were doing on the field, or in terms of what they were spending on the field. So new ownership hopefully should help that. They have signed a new striker, hasn't joined the team yet, but it's their club record signing, a $6 million ish transfer fee, which is a big deal for RSL. And we'll see what happens with the team hopefully getting better. But I think, naturally fans show up more for a championship level team than like a ninth place in the Western Conference kind of team. And that's what RSL has been for the last 5-6 years. So I honestly, still there's a big fan base. Like they have 11,500 season tickets. So that's a pretty good basis to start from for filling Rio Tinto Stadium, or America First Stadium now. But yeah, it's when the team becomes better, I think the fans will show up and kind of sell out the building more. Regarding Messi, it's going to be awesome. Like having Messi in MLS is so cool. The idea that he's going to be potentially coming to Sandy, Utah, in a U.S. Open Cup final in September would be amazing. Obviously, tickets for that game would be in the high 4 figures. I wouldn't sell my season. It would pay for my season tickets to sell this one ticket, and yet I, would absolutely go to that game because what a remarkable opportunity. And like he's gonna kick a lot of ass in Major League Soccer. It's gonna be awesome. I'm very, very excited for that. And like I said, just very excited about the acquisitions RSL's gotten over the last couple of weeks that I think do show some ambition from the owners and the club.
So is it official that he's coming to play at that game, or is it still a waiting time?
Yeah, so they're in the semifinals right now, and if RSL wins in the semifinals and Inter Miami wins in their semifinal, then they play in the final in Rio Tinto Stadium come September.
So basically, as soon as that game's like getting close to being over, everyone should be on Ticketmaster or whatever, getting ready to buy those tickets before they're sold out and selling for thousands.
I mean, they're going to sell out in 1 second, and it's going to be one of those things where season ticket holders get first access, and then like American Express holders, and it's going to be. I mean, it's going to be Taylor Swift ticket crazy to go full circle. So,
well, put me on the list if it gives you a chance for a friend to buy a ticket with you. Put me on that list, and maybe that's the game that'll catch me into soccer because I it's crazy. I went to a hockey game in the last year down in Vegas. I went to Vegas Knights game, and I was not a hockey fan before then. And I went to that game, and I was all in. I'm bought in now, so maybe that's what I need. I need to go experience a big time soccer game, and that'll draw me in.
When was the last RSL game you went to?
Oh, it's been years. Like this is back when like they were champions and Beckerman, all those guys were there and stuff, and that was fun. It was just like I just went with a friend because he needed someone to go. I didn't really. It wasn't one of those where I cared to go, but. I do wish that team, like I said, I'm not a big soccer fan. I wish it disappoints me when I do see photos of that place being empty and stuff like that. Cause I would hate for that team to, I don't know if it's ever going to get to that point where they would get sold or whatever, but it just disappoints me to see that.
Yeah. And I think you're overselling like how empty it is, right? Like I think last game had 19,000 of the 20,000 seats, like pretty legitimately full. Like, I think they're doing a good job. And like the key soccer attendance thing is like, you just have to get into it. Like, You have to do the chants. You have to do the claps and the drums. And, I stand in the South goal with the big supporter groups and yell and swear at the refs and all that stuff and wave the flags and all, and that's what makes it fun and unique, right? Like it's not basketball where you're sitting on, in the stands and kind of clapping when a basket scored. You're kind of part of the show in a really, really cool and unique way, I think.
So here, actually, that just reminded me of another question I want to ask you, and this will be our last question. It kind of relates to a whole full circle here, and that just deals with Ryan Smith, obviously owner of the Jazz, deals with Real Salt Lake, and now he's talking about bringing in a hockey team. We just talked about hockey a little there. There's even talk, possibly getting the Olympics, so they would need a new arena, such and such. I guess my question to you is, what are your thoughts on the whole thing? If they did a new arena, where do you think they would do it? Would it be an arena for the Jazz and a hockey team? Just your whole thing on it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think I personally, as a sports fan, love the idea of both the Olympics coming back here and potentially getting an NHL team to Utah. I think both would be a lot of fun and really cool. I think it's relatively likely to happen. Ryan seems to have real buy-in from NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman in terms of at least being kind of the easiest possibility for a Arizona Coyotes move. Should everything, kind of they're probably on plan G now. Should plan G and plan H fail and like Tempe failed, Scottsdale might fail. If they kind of give up entirely on that, Houston still would make some sense if they want to just go big market and they don't have a hockey team. That's the fourth biggest city in America. So, while not a hockey market, makes some sense from a number of people point of view. Frankly, Salt Lake is not a hockey market either. So as much some people do like hockey here, but it's just like, it's never been a historical hockey site. So I think that's a real possibility. I think, yes, Ryan, absolutely. The idea would be that the team plays in Vivint Arena, or I guess Delta Center, now, for the first couple of years while they figure out the arena stuff. Where that arena would be, I think they don't know yet. I think there is a world in which it's moved to the old prison site in Bluffdale. I do think that whatever arena they build will be a combo basketball and hockey arena for an NHL team. I think we're pretty clearly there. And Ryan said as much on the 32 Things podcast with Sportsnet. If they did move the team to Bluffdale, that would be really sucky. And that would be, I think, very bad for kind of the player experience and the management experience in a way that, like, it would be one of, I think, two NBA arenas that are not in its downtown, in the city's downtown. The other one I'm thinking of is San Antonio, is kind of 15 minutes away. Honestly, Bluffdale is even further than San Antonio is. There used to be the Malice at the, you remember the Palace of Auburn Hills, the site of the Malice of the Palace. Auburn Hills is 45 minutes away from downtown Detroit, but that arena is now moved, or they built a new one in downtown Detroit. So it would be uniquely weird to have a suburban arena in the NBA. And I hope the Jazz don't go that direction.
Man, I'm sitting here trying to just think while you're talking, like where they could. I wonder if the crazy idea, they obviously are getting rid of that ballpark downtown. I wonder if they could just put it there. I guess I don't know where else they would even put a new arena downtown, to be honest.
I mean, honestly, to me, the easiest building site is the Park Place parking lot, kitty corner to Vivint, to Delta Center.
Okay.
Right? You've got a whole block there to build on while you build a new arena, but we'll see.
Man, that would make it. It's kind of already a disaster for parking downtown, but if they did that, that would make it a crap show down there for Jazz games. But
and so it'd be bad parking for a year, but not. I don't think it's an undoable parking situation. And then you make the old arena block the parking lot. You just flip flop it.
So you're too positive. I'm over here just like, no, I don't like that idea. But I like you. You're positive. I like that idea. But all right, Andy, I appreciate you so much for your time. Before we get out of here, why don't you give everyone your plugs? Tell them where they can find you and read all your stuff.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Andy B. Larsen. Obviously, the Salt Lake Tribune is who I work for and where you can find my writing. We've got good deals to subscribe. You can subscribe for $8 for 6 months. If you need the promo code, you can tweet at me. But please subscribe and support local journalism. It's what allows us to keep doing this job.
Yeah, for reals, people. Instead of buying another hamburger that you shouldn't be eating, just help keep people in business like Andy over here.
I'm team do both. Get both. Eat the hamburger, and while you eat the hamburger, read the Salt Lake Tribune.
Too damn positive over there. Whatever. All right. Thanks so much for your time, Andy. I appreciate it.
Thanks.